Hi everyone, it's Sunny in Alaska, and today I'm sharing my recipe with you for making your own texture paste. This is really fun to make, and it just needs some basic supplies. You may even have some of this on hand already. Just some baking soda, some Mod Podge medium, and some white acrylic craft paint. Pretty simple stuff. So here's the recipe. This is what I use when I want to make embossing paste or texture paste. It's a little bit thicker and it doesn't get as runny and tend to go under the stencil. When I'm making homemade puffy snow, I use a thinner recipe, which I'll cover in another video. This allows me to use a brush to apply it to my projects and control where I want it to go, and doesn't make it look quite as clumpy. So I've die cut a Mighty Oak cover plate, and I'm going to use that as my stencil. I cut it out of white because I don't really care what the color is, and I've mixed up my paste. You can see it's about the consistency of maybe some thick frosting or toothpaste. It's not very runny, it sticks to my knife. If you want it a little thinner, add a little bit of water. If you want it a little thicker, add some more baking soda. You can really control the consistency that you have. So you want to kind of smear this around and just press it in using the flat part of the knife. You can make it as thick or as thin as you want. One thing to keep in mind though is if you do dry it out with a heat gun or apply any other type of heat to it, it is going to puff up a little bit. So that may or may not be an effect that you want. If you want to be able to dry out your paste and not get the puffiness, then you can use standard PVC craft glue instead of the Mod Podge, and it shouldn't have such a puffy effect. So I'm basically just going to smear this around and get a lot of great coverage for where I want my tree. I did my best to use the back of the palette knife to smooth out the texture paste and get a nice even coat. I like to use the heat gun on my texture paste so that I get a slight puffing and a smoother look to it. So that's kind of a personal preference. If you prefer it the way that it is, you can play with it both ways and see which way you like it better. This texture paste takes color really well, so I'm going to use some cocoa bean to stain the trunk of the tree and then move on to staining the leaves with some beautiful fall colors. I started with a layer of cocoa bean on the trunk and then moved on to pure poppy for the leaves. I wasn't super concerned if I got a little bit of the cocoa bean up on the bottoms of the leaves because it just kind of helped darken it up. I also used some Canyon clay, some Harvest Gold, and the Harvest Gold wasn't quite as dark as I wanted, so then I got brave and decided to break out my brand new Saffron Spice. So these were perfect fall colors. After I was all done with my shading, the embossing paste was still soft enough that I was able to put a slight impression in it with the wood grain cover plate. Then I made another die cut in dark chocolate and used a wood grain embossing folder from Teresa Collins to add even more texture. I cut a quick partial tag from Ripe Avocado with tag sale number 5 from Paper Tray Ink, and then added some jute and a sentiment. I've been dying to do one of these cards with some snow that's nice and puffy and has a great texture to it. So I grabbed another piece of white cardstock, and this time I'm going to use Blueberry Sky to sponge kind of a nice background, staying lighter in the middle. I also added some Spring Rain to the center of it to get a second color. This creates a really nice, soft, wintry sky with a lot of depth and texture, and it makes the perfect backdrop for adding some snow. I've been dying to do this technique and kind of waiting to find the perfect die to do it with, and I finally found the Hero Arts confetti die that was just released this month in October, and I knew this would make the perfect stencil for my snow background using the texture paste. I poked out a bunch of the holes, or weeded them out, but I left some of them in towards the bottom because I wasn't going to bother with that part. That's where my kind of scene was going to go. So I secured it using some post-it notes again and started spreading the texture paste. If you didn't want there to be quite so many dots on your background, all you would have to do is not poke out quite so many of the dots, and you can literally have as many or as few as you would like to have. This time, of course, I could not resist adding some palette glitter to my background and having a nice sparkly snowfall. The texture paste has a glue base, so it holds the glitter really well as long as it's just a little bit wet and tacky. I of course hit it with my heat gun to make the snow puff up a little bit. You can watch it kind of get puffy and round. This is the super fun magical part. This would be very fun to do with kids and a great addition to pretty much any winter project. So that's how I created the background panel for this beautiful layered holiday card. I hope you enjoyed my video, and I can't wait to see your creations using this really fun technique.